Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is part 3 of the draft archetypes from Eternal Masters. I hope you're enjoying the videos for those of you watching, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch one of my videos. Here we're going to be talking about the red-black combination and the white-green combination, and I just want to make a quick reminder that I'm obviously no expert in the draft field here, especially since the set hasn't been released yet. The point of these videos is just to get the juices flowing and give people, maybe less experienced players, an idea of something that they can do to approach the format for their very first draft. Because again, with the high stakes of Eternal Masters packs being the way they are, you really want to do as good as possible during the draft, especially if you're only going to be able to do one of these drafts. You want to walk away with prize packs. So having a game plan from the beginning is really good, and knowing what these color combinations do give you a better idea of what you can draft and what you should see, what you should be on the lookout for when you're drafting this set. So let's kick it off with red-black, and I will start by saying that red-black here is kind of, if you ignore the archetype here, which is sacrificing things, or at least I believe that's the archetype they're going for, red-black feels kind of a traditional role of just playing a control game, kind of like a Grixis deck. You remove a lot of things, you do a lot of burn, you attack a lot. So black and red have a lot of removal spells, a lot of burn spells, a lot of creatures, and that's what you're going to see here. The actual archetype here, if you want to draft a consistent strategy-based deck rather than just creatures and removal, is a weird kind of sacrifice theme. It's not fully fleshed out. It's kind of a weird thing because there isn't a lot of payoff for it, more than there is just cards that fit the theme. But some of the staples you're looking for here, BloodArtist, I think, is the go-to reason you would draft this particular archetype. If you're sacrificing a lot of things and you're causing your opponent to sacrifice things, BloodArtist is the key card here. So that is the card that would push me into this archetype rather than just building a generic red and black deck. So BloodArtist is an uncommon. I want to say it was a common the last time around. I'm not entirely sure about that, but uncommon seems correct. The card is deceptively powerful, and if you've played against Zulaport Cutthroat, maybe you're a newer player, then you know that BloodArtist is pretty much a pumped up version of that. Very, very good card. And then you have Innocent Blood, I think, is probably the best card for this kind of archetype where each player is sacrificing a creature. Innocent Blood is a really cool card. It does have some bad matchups. Generally, token creation matchups are really bad for it, but it's pretty good against decks that don't play a high creature count or play really, really big creatures. So Innocent Blood is going to be bad against things like elves and token generation, but it's going to be good against your big stompy decks or your blue-red decks that play a small creature count. And I have Dragon Egg here. I'm not saying Dragon Egg is a necessary card for you to play the sacrifice theme, but it does highlight the benefit of playing this sort of sacrifice-based deck where you're able to kill off your own creatures without losing value. For instance, Dragon Egg, when you sacrifice it, you get the benefit of whatever card you're causing sacrifice it with, plus you get the 2/2 dragon token out of it. So cards like that, things that benefit from actually dying, are the cards you're looking for to flesh out this archetype. But yes, BloodArtist, I think, is the key card for this archetype. BloodArtist is very, very good card, and I'd be looking to pick up as many as I possibly can, possibly first pick a BloodArtist out of a weaker pack and try to go red-black sacrifice here. To fill out the rest of the deck, you're going to want to prioritize, first off, Morbid. I think I had to, again, making a confession here, look up a couple of these archetypes and what they're supposed to be doing, and a couple sites said that the red-black theme was Morbid, but there really aren't that many Morbid cards. The same way blue-green is supposed to be Threshold, but there is not really a lot of Threshold in the entire set. But you do have a couple Morbid cards, maybe 3 or 4 throughout the entire set. And those are the type of cards that benefit from creatures dying. If you're going to be sacrificing things, why not take these Morbid cards and get the extra advantage off of those? For instance, Wake Dancer comes with a zombie if a creature's already died that turn. Preferably your opponent's creatures are dying, but when you're sacrificing things, that's an easy way to turn on Morbid. Tragic Slip is probably the best removal spell in this set if you're able to reliably trigger Morbid. So take those cards highly. Even though there's not a lot of them, the ones that are in this set are pretty good. You're also going to want some sort of sacrifice outlet, and I don't know if I've mentioned this in a video or not before, but it's pretty intuitive that sacrifice outlets that don't cost mana are generally higher priorities than those that do cost mana. So for instance, in this set there's a card called, I think it's Wake of Vultures or something like that, and it's just a big dumb flyer where you sacrifice a creature to regenerate it. But you have to pay mana for that, and that's not really what you're looking for. You're looking for a card like Ashnod's Altar or Carrion Feeder, and there might be one or two more where you can sacrifice a creature at instant speed, get some sort of effect out of it, but you don't have to pay mana, so you can do it whenever you need to, and you can do it when you're tapped out. Carrion Feeder and Ashnod's Altar kind of key cards here when you're sacrificing lots of creatures, when you're going really deep into this archetype. And finally, I said temp creatures, as in temporary creatures. You see a lot of Vanishing and Echo cards in red. Maybe not a lot of Vanishing, but Keldon Marauders, for instance, is a card that's not going to stick around. It's going to enter the battlefield, and at some point you're going to lose it very, very quickly. So it works very nicely in the sacrifice theme. Before it vanishes, you can actually get value off of it by using it to feed some sort of sacrifice effect, like Carrion Feeder or Ashnod's Altar. The same goes for Echo. Cards like Gitu Slinger, and there's a good 3 or 4 Echo cards in this set. Cards with Echo, they come in and you have to pay again the mana cost again on the following turn after it enters the battlefield, or you lose that creature, you sacrifice it. And a lot of times you don't really want to pay the Echo cost because it's like using up a whole turn most of the time. So it really benefits to play those Echo creatures in these sacrifice decks where you can play it, get a powerful effect off of them, and then instead of using up your whole turn to keep that creature around, you feed it into something like, I don't know, Carrion Feeder, Ashnod's Altar. There's another enchantment in this set. It's sack 2 creatures, make a 3/1. It's an enchantment that I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but you get the point. Sacrifice effects that don't cost mana are the best here, and they go very, very well with these creatures that aren't going to stick around, these creatures that are doomed, so to say, off of effects like Vanishing or Echo. The rares you're looking for here, there are a couple. Malicious Affliction is a nice little reprint. I think it's a card that was only ever reprinted in a commander deck, and it's a personal favorite of a lot of people. It kills a non-black creature for 2 mana at instant speed, which is already fantastic, but if a creature's died that turn, you get to copy it. So you essentially get to kill 2 non-black creatures for double black. And you don't have to pay for the copy either. Pretty insane card if you can reliably cast it, as long as you're not playing against a mono black deck or something stupid like that. But this is a key card. I think it's the only morbid card at rare, but you get the point. If you can sacrifice a creature at any point, especially at instant speed, then Malicious Affliction becomes a high priority and a pretty insane card for 2 mana. Braid's Cabal Minion is a double-edged sword. It causes players to sacrifice something during their upkeep, and if it doesn't go away, then it just gets really annoying. It's banned in Commander for a reason, because it's a really, really tedious card. And I wouldn't be looking to play this in a general black deck, but in a red-black deck, when sacrificing is my theme, this card becomes a little bit better because it hurts the opponent. They're going to have to sacrifice something regardless, and you're going to build a deck that benefits from you sacrificing cards. So Cabal Minion fits this theme. It's a good example of a card that's good in an archetype, but worse in just a general red-black deck. Very good highlight there. Crater Hillion is a card that I think people are not going to be happy opening. You know, your 25-cent card in a set with $100 cards is pretty disappointing, but it's not a bad card by any means. It's very, very big in this format, power and toughness wise. 6/6 is huge, but it does have the Echo cost, so you're essentially playing 12 mana for a board sweeper and a 6/6, which may or may not be worth it. You tell me. The mana is split up, but it's a big guy. Comes down, does a lot of damage to everything, hopefully clears the board, and then you can feed it into your sacrifice engines. Here, a card like Ashnod's Altar is probably better than a card like Carrion Feeder, because unless your feeder's huge, it's probably going to die to the Helion. So enchantment-based or artifact-based Sacrifice Engine goes very well with Crater Helion. But it's just a generally good card, I think. Probably very well suited for this format, and a rare that I'd be looking to take up pretty early if I knew red-black was the theme I'm going for. Icarid is also here, and Icarid's, you know, if you've ever played Dredge in older format, Icarid's a very annoying card, but it is a card that you can reliably sacrifice and get back over the course of a game a couple of times. It does sacrifice itself on end step if you ever play it out, but it's the type of card you want to sacrifice before you get to the end step anyway. Try to get a big hit for 3, bring it back the next turn, and then feed it into one of your sacrifice engines before it sacrifices itself at the end of the turn. Very nice little card. Also not too bad on the money front, so I wouldn't be disappointed taking an Icarid in any sort of black deck, and I'd be very happy taking it in a sacrifice themed deck. So red-black here, sacrifice is the name of the game. I don't know how good that is. It does require you to 2-for-1 yourself sometimes, but if you're feeding that into powerful effects and growing creatures over the course of a game, that may just be very good deck. I have no idea. It's the type of deck I'd be reluctant to try out on day 1, but it could end up being very powerful. Now this one I'm very excited to talk about, and this is the go-to strategy that I'm really hoping I get to draft during Eternal Masters, because it looks really, really sweet, and it's very, very fleshed out. You'll see I have probably more to say about this archetype than any other archetype during this video series, but that is green-white, and the theme here is Enchantress, basically. It's auras and enchantments. And it is probably the archetype that seems most fleshed out during the entire set. You'll notice on the next slide. But your key cards here are Mesa Enchantress, and that's probably the quote-unquote key card. Whenever you cast an enchantment, draw a card. You'll notice if you're building this archetype, the games where you have the Enchantress are way, way different than the games when you don't. Enchantress just lets you draw tons and tons and tons of cards, and it is the reason to play this many enchantments. I would not recommend playing, 7+ enchantments in a general green-white deck, but when Enchantress is your theme, I would go very hard in the enchantments. Ancestral Mask is also one of the huge payoff cards for playing this. Again, not a card you would play in just any green deck. You have to have the cards to back it up, and it actually doesn't do anything on its own. But +2/+2 for every other enchantment on the battlefield, not even enchantments you control, is pretty insane. Also not a pretty decent sideboard card against enchantment decks, since it does give you a boost for your opponent's enchantments as well. But a card I'd be looking to pick up very highly in green-white. And Yavimaya Enchantress has the word Enchantress in its name, just a card that gets built up for the more enchantments you're playing in your deck. These are the payoff cards, the cards that would push me into the archetype rather than just a green-white deck, and cards that I'm very excited to try and play. Moving on, yes, there's a bunch of stuff on this. So auras, the reason I'm saying this archetype is very fleshed out and doable is because there are a ton of green and white auras in this set. I have 6 here that are at the common and uncommon level, and I didn't even cover the entire set. There are a couple more auras, not to mention auras that are outside green and white if you end up in a different color combination. But all these cards, you'll notice Rancor, Pacifism, Faith's Fetters, Armadillo Cloak, even Elephant Guide, and Roots. Roots being the worst card here. All of them are very playable cards, very strong. A lot of them fill the removal role in the form of an aura, while also triggering your enchantresses and drawing you a bunch of cards. So you've got a huge pick at auras. And like I said, I wouldn't be playing 6 auras in a green-white deck that has no payoff for playing auras, but if I'm playing Enchantress and I'm drawing cards for every aura I cast, I'm actively looking to pick up pretty much any of these enchantments. They're fantastic. Rancor is probably the most consistent as far as drawing you a bunch of cards in the course of a game, but Pacifism and Faith's Fetters are very high picks in almost any format they've been printed in, and I don't think that's going to change here either. Pacifism could very well be like a second or third pick if you know you're playing white, and Armadillo Cloak is just insane. There are some decks that are going to have very hard time beating the advantage you get off of Armadillo Cloak. The only Enchantment Matters cards I've found in the set are Commune with the Gods and Monk Idealist, but they're both fairly decent cards, and they get a lot better in this archetype. Monk Idealist just regrows a enchantment from your graveyard, which is card advantage for a 2/2. Not bad. Commune with the Gods fits in a lot of different type of decks, but it does search up an enchantment out of the top 5 cards of your library, and if it bricks on an enchantment, it at least gets you a creature, so it's probably not going to miss. Commune with the Gods is probably, like I said, fits into a bunch of different strategies, so it's not a card that is always going to go last pick, but it's probably going to go pretty late in the packs. And then finally, there are just other enchantments. Your Enchantresses don't need you to be casting auras specifically, just as long as you're casting enchantments. All of the Hondens are in this set, and while I don't know how realistic it is to pick up a bunch of Hondens with them being uncommon and being legendary and so forth, if you can pick up 2 of them, I think that justifies playing any of them. Some of them are a little weaker on their own, especially the white and green one, I think are a little bit too slow for the mana costs, but it depends on what you're playing against. The more Hondens you get, the better each of your Hondens gets, obviously, and I would be looking to splash a 3rd or 4th Honden in an enchantment-based deck if I could get them. And then cards like Seal of Strength, not an inherently super powerful card, but when you're triggering an enchantment-based deck, drawing a card, and then you have that giant growth on a stick, it's a pretty nice card to add. Same with Field of Souls. Field of Souls seems like it was included in the set because it does cover a couple different strategies. For instance, it goes in red-white tokens fairly well. But it goes well here too. You have an enchantment and you trigger your Mesa Enchantress, draw a card, and then if it dies, you get a 1/1 Spirit token. Nice little value card here. But yeah, you can see on this slide alone, there's 12 cards. I think I did my math correctly there. But that's a bunch of enchantments in a set, especially the auras. I was surprised going through this list to find that there were so many green-white auras in this set. And like I said, they're not bad auras, so any green-white player or any player who's in one of those colors is probably going to be looking to pick up any of these. But green-white will really pay you off. You can probably pick up a good number of auras throughout the course of a game, and you're probably going to be the only person who wants Armadillo Cloak. I don't know how tempting it is to splash Armadillo Cloak, but I don't think the appeal is really there. It's a card that really pays you off for being green-white, so you can probably get past it if you end up in this color combination. The rares you're looking for, obviously, are Gothian Enchantress. I mean, come on, the set gave you a mythic rare to complement the strategy. That's how they were very much forcing Enchantress in this set by giving you a mythic. Unfortunately, it's a mythic, so you're not going to be able to play for it, and you don't really care about Shroud here at all, but it's just another Enchantress card. You cast an enchantment, you draw a spell, and this one actually comes out easier than the last one. The last one, I think Mesa Enchantress is a 2/2. I'm not going to go back and check, but a Gothian Enchantress, if you first pick it, I would be looking very, very hard to play it and take advantage of its ability. It's a very strong ability. And I'll talk about Shroud here in a second, but it doesn't work super favorably, but we don't care about the Shroud on that card. Enlightened Tutor, go search for an enchantment, put it on top of your deck. Whatever your best enchantment is, whatever aura is going to help you out. If you're playing Pacifism or Faith Feathers, this is basically searching up a removal spell to put on top of your deck. Very, very nice. Green Sun Zenith is the type of card you'll play in pretty much any green deck. If I see a Green Sun Zenith, I'm probably taking it, whether I'm playing green or not, but in my green decks, I'm very happy to play it. In Enchantress, it gets even better because it tutors up your key creatures, a Mesa Enchantress and whatever the 2/2 that grows when you play an enchantment. I know I just mentioned it like 5 minutes ago, but I forgot its name. Green Sun Zenith is actually tutors up the key creatures from your deck and puts them on the battlefield. And actually, I'm sorry, it doesn't search for Mesa Enchantress because it only searches for green creatures, but you can search up the other one that grows over time, and you can search up our Gothian Enchantress as well, and just have an extra copy, so to say, in your deck through Green Sun Zenith. And Sylvan Library, you're probably going to play this in your green deck. I don't honestly know how good Sylvan Library is in a typical draft. It's fairly decent in cube draft from when I've played it, and I probably play it in my green-white decks, but it does cost a lot of life if you ever start triggering it more than once. But it does work in Enchantress just as well as any green deck, and it gives you basically extra value in an Enchantress deck, which is saying a lot for a card like Sylvan Library. If I can get extra value off of a card that's already a value engine, then I'm very happy with that. One caveat to play in this, this is just a special note on playing with auras and enchantments. First off, Shroud and Protection have weird interactions with enchantments. Do not draft a lot of Shroud creatures if your goal is to go Voltron and suit up a creature to win. Shroud is not hexproof, and I made this mistake a lot during Modern Masters too, where there were a lot of Shroud creatures. Be very careful. If you're not used to playing with Shroud, you cannot attach an enchantment to a Shroud creature. It doesn't work. It's not hexproof. You can't target your own thing. You're not playing Boggles in Eternal Masters. It's not going to happen. So be very, very careful. I know Argothian Enchantress has Shroud, but you're not really looking to suit that up and attack with it anyway. You're using that as a card draw engine. The same goes for Protection from X. If you give a creature Protection from white and it has a white enchantment on it, that enchantment's going to drop off. It is very nice defense against cards like Pacifism and Faith's Feathers, but it doesn't work favorably with cards like Armadillo Cloak. For instance, if your goal is to try and block a green creature and you give your creature Protection from green, but your creature was enchanted with Armadillo Cloak, that cloak is going to drop off. Protection does knock off auras if the auras are the color of the protection that you have for the turn. So be careful when you're drafting those together. Also, another special note that applies very specifically to this draft archetype is sometimes it's worth considering hate draft, and sometimes you get towards the end of the pack and there's just nothing in there. If you're between two cards you're not going to play, take the card that's going to destroy your enchantments. That way nobody else has access to it. If you see a Light Trigon Predator and you have no other intentions of taking any card in the pack, take the Trigon Predator. Otherwise, it's going to start blowing up your enchantments, and you don't want that to happen. There is a okay amount of enchantment removal, maybe around 5 cards in this set at common and uncommon that can blow up enchantments. So be careful. Try to take those cards away from players if you need to, but don't prioritize them over cards that are going to make your deck better. I would never advocate for hate drafting before making your actual deck better. This is just in those cases where there's nothing in the pack. Prioritize the enchantment hate so other players have less access to it. And that's all I have to say. I know I probably talked for a while on green-white there, but I think it's a really exciting archetype, and I'm very happy to see all the support it has. Especially the Mythic Rare Argothian Enchantress. That's kind of my go-to, the card I want to open the most in a draft as far as non-value cards go. But at any rate, I thank you guys for watching again. This is episode 3. There are 2 more episodes to go. In the next one, I'll be talking about Black-Red, and I'll be talking about... I'm sorry, not black-red. It says black-red there, but that's a lie. It's actually going to be black-blue, which is a weird, janky kind of strategy for black-blue. But I'll be talking about black-blue, and I'll also be talking about Orzhov, so white-black. And they're, you know, a little less exciting, I think, than the ones in this video, but still something that we need to talk about. So thanks for watching, and I hope you guys watch the next video as well. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. I really appreciate the love, and I love you guys. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and call it a video. Thanks for watching, guys.